This is Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest are one of the most historic football clubs in England. They are currently the oldest football club in the England top division, the Premier League, and boast one English First Division, 2 FA Cups, 4 League Cups, 1 Charity Shield, and of course 2 European Cups, which is 2 more than Arsenal, Tottenham, Man City and Everton combined. Despite all this success, every football club has its ups and downs, and in 1993, Nottingham Forest's most successful manager in their history, Brian Clough, retired after 18 years in charge, and Nottingham Forest's 16-year run in the top flight at the time came to an end. Brian Clough had taken Nottingham Forest from the second division, which is now the Championship, to the top flight, and in his first season in the top flight guided Forest to their first English title. Within 3 years he'd also won 2 European Cups, won the League Cup twice and a Charity Shield. Clough would also win the League Cup twice in 1989 and 1990. In Brian Clough's time at the City Ground, he'd put Nottingham Forest's name on the map in Europe and cemented them as one of the biggest clubs in England. However, after his departure in 1993, Forest would struggle to compete as they once did. Now, in the first few years after Brian Clough's departure, Forest did bounce back to the Premier League twice, but in 1999, Forest would be relegated from the Premier League and not return for a painfully long 23 years. In the early 2000s, Forest struggled for consistency in England's second division, the Championship, only making the playoffs once in 6 years, finishing 14th, 11th, 16th, 6th, 14th again, and then 23rd in 2005, which resulted in the relegation to League One. It meant Forest would play in the third tier for the first time since the early 1950s. It took Nottingham Forest 3 hard years to get out of League One, but a 3-2 win over Yeovil in May 2008 would seal a second place finish and promotion for Nottingham Forest back to the Championship. Forest started life back in the Championship by finishing 19th in 2009, cementing their place back in the Championship by avoiding relegation. They'd go on to finish 3rd in 2010, but miss out on promotion due to defeat to Blackpool in the playoff semi-finals. In 2011, they'd finish in the playoffs again in 6th place, but once again would not be promoted. After that, Forest struggled for consistency in the Championship again, finishing 19th in 2012, 8th in 2013, 11th in 2014, 14th in 2015, 16th in 2016, 21st in 2017, 17th in 2018, 9th in 2019. Forest finished 7th in 2020, where they missed out on the playoffs on the final day despite starting the day in the top 6. Forest would also finish 17th in 2021. Forest went into the 21-22 season with Chris Hughton as the manager, after he'd guided them to safety in the 2021 season. Nottingham Forest would only go on to pick up 1 point from their opening 7 games in this season. Chris Hughton was sacked as Nottingham Forest sat bottom of the table. This is where Steve Cooper came in. Now, Cooper had been at Swansea for the last couple of seasons and guided them to back-to-back playoff finishes. Despite not taking Swansea back to the Premier League, his achievements had not gone unnoticed, and Nottingham Forest brought him in. Steve Cooper would go unbeaten in his first 5 games as Nottingham Forest manager, with 4 wins and a draw, the last of them being a 2-1 win at Bristol City, where Lyle Taylor scored 2 goals in stoppage time. These late goals and this great form showed Steve Cooper wasn't just happy to keep Nottingham Forest out of the bottom 3 this season, but was prepared to march them up the Championship table, and they went from bottom to 12th by Christmas. Steve Cooper started to get the best out of these Nottingham Forest players. Bryce Samba, Jed Spence, Joe Garner, Zinker Nagel and Brennan Johnson all performing really well, and their January business would show they were keen to push on for the playoffs. Steve Cook, Sam Surridge and Keenan Davis were all added to the squad. The start of 2022 saw Forest really push on in the Championship, but they also went on a brilliant FA Cup run, beating Premier League Arsenal and Leicester, playoff chasing Huddersfield, and then finally falling short to Liverpool 1-0 at the City Ground. Despite using up a lot of energy getting to the FA Cup quarter-finals, Nottingham Forest found themselves in 9th place in the Championship by the end of February, and would go on to win 9 of their next 10 games to climb up to 3rd with 2 games to go. Nottingham Forest went into their penultimate game of the season against second placed AFC Bournemouth just 3 points behind them. Despite giving it their best, Nottingham Forest would fall to a 1-0 defeat. It meant that AFC Bournemouth would be promoted via the automatics back to the Premier League, and Nottingham Forest would have to make do with the playoffs. Nottingham Forest drew their final game of the league season 1-1 at Hull City, and would take on Sheffield United, who'd finished 5th in the Championship playoffs. This would be Steve Cooper's third crack at a Championship playoffs in a row. Would it be third time lucky with Nottingham Forest? Nottingham Forest began the playoffs with a 2-1 win at Bramall Lane and really could have come away with a 3 or 4 goal win. The home game against Sheffield United would prove to be difficult. Despite taking the lead and going 3-1 up on aggregate, Sheffield United battled their way to drag this tie to penalties. But it would be Nottingham Forest who could hold their nerve in the penalty shootout, and Bryce Samba produced some fantastic saves to get Nottingham Forest to Wembley. Nottingham Forest would take on Huddersfield Town, who'd finished third in the Championship. Both Nottingham Forest and Huddersfield had beaten each other in the league season, and this one was really on a knife edge. It was a tense game, but with Levi Colwell's own goal, Nottingham Forest ground out a 1-0 win to return to the Premier League for the first time in 23 years. Steve Cooper had done what many managers couldn't, and he was determined to stay on and keep Nottingham Forest in the Premier League in the 22-23 season. It'd be a difficult summer for Nottingham Forest, seeing the likes of Samba, Spence, Grabban, Joe Lolly, Garner, Zinkernagel and Keenan Davis all depart, but Nottingham Forest would be busy in the transfer window, bringing in the likes of Dean Henderson, Taiwo Awaniyi, Harry Toffolo and O'Brien from Huddersfield, Jesse Lingard, Emmanuel Dennis, Remo Freuler, Morgan Gibbs-White, Willy Bolly, Serge Aurier, Nico Williams and many more. Nottingham Forest came into this season with plenty of players and didn't seem to know what their best starting 11 was. Forest started the 22-23 season with a 2-0 defeat at Newcastle, but would win their first home game 1-0 against the Hammers. Despite picking up 4 points in their first 3 Premier League games, they'd make it to game week 10 with just 5 points to show and just 1 clean sheet. Nottingham Forest ideally needed their second win, and boy did they do it with a statement. Nottingham Forest recorded a 1-0 win over Liverpool on the 22nd of October 2022. Not only was it their second win which dragged them closer to survival, but it was a statement result against the side that won the Premier League only 3 years ago. After this, Steve Cooper managed to find a formula which worked for him, and Nottingham Forest went on a very good run. After 21 games, they were up to 24 points, over a point per game, and they picked up 19 points in just 11 games, which is top 7 form. Once again, Nottingham Forest were not just prioritising the league, but managed to go on a Carabao Cup run, reaching the semi-finals, knocking out Wolves and Tottenham on their way. At the time of recording this video, Nottingham Forest are heading into March, having not lost a home league game since September, their most recent being a 1-1 draw with Manchester City. Steve Cooper has also added the likes of Keylor Navas, John Joe Shelvey, Chris Wood, Scarpa, Felipe and Danilo all to this Nottingham Forest squad, which has really boosted the overall squad quality and their chances of getting over the line this season. So then, is Steve Cooper the best thing that's happened to Nottingham Forest since Brian Clough? Well, it certainly is hard to argue. Brian Clough certainly is the best manager Nottingham Forest will ever have, but Steve Cooper is certainly trying to get Nottingham Forest's name back in the spotlight for the right reasons. He's been fantastic with recruitment, seems to get the best out of players, a tactical master at times, and he's a very calm and calculated manager on the touchline. It'll be interesting to see what the next part of this Nottingham Forest journey is. Can Steve Cooper continue to get the best out of this club, and can he push them back to the glory days? Make sure if you've enjoyed this video guys to drop a like, do feel free to hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts on Nottingham Forest and their sudden resurgence under Steve Cooper down in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.